So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome on behalf of ACEM to our 14th annual conference. I should say actually our first hybrid conference ever. So I hope you are comfortable here in the room and also at home. We are doing a slightly different format than usual. We usually use this venue for these events. We have motorcycles around, so that is not different. We usually have 200 people in the room. We have about 35, 40 today, but we have about 1,000 connected online. So I'm very happy that you could join us today, both in the room and at home, ranging from Indonesia to the US, as I understood. So for today, we have a rather compact program. We are planning to talk about the Vision 2030 when it comes to the motorcycle sector. The industry has been working quite a lot within a changing environment, also in policy terms. As we know, there's a lot of discussion going on the sustainability of transport and mobility. And of course, we would like to put the motorcycle on the map when it comes to these discussions. So the point today is to present to you briefly, give you an overview of what the Vision 2030 Plus is from the motorcycle sector, and also to interact within the panel here on my right, whom I'd like to thank for joining, as well as with the audience here today in the room, and also take some questions online that will come afterwards. So without further ado, I'd like to leave this place to Markus Schramm, our Vice President, to give you the keynote, to introduce you the topics for today. The event will be moderated by Aled Walker from Deloitte, who's on my left, and he'll be taking over after the keynote speech. So I hope you enjoy the event. Looking forward to good discussions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome to our 2021 conference from my side as well. The Ride to 2030 and Beyond, the contribution of the motorcycle industry to sustainable mobility. That is the title. And I'm very pleased that some of you are here. After 2 years, it's possible now. And many others are joining us online to the first web-streamed ACEM event. Thank you very much indeed to taking the time to be with us. I also would like to thank the excellent panel we have here today for discussion, to discuss the present and also, of course, the future of the motorcycling at the horizon of 2030. And I'm sure we all will learn a lot of today's discussion. But before we start, give me the opportunity to say some words to the current situation of the motorcycle industry. Most of you know that last year was particularly difficult for the motorcycle sector in Europe. The national lockdowns imposed to contain the COVID-19 pandemic in spring 2020, when usually the motorcycle market picks up, caused a substantial decrease or even a halt on our sales. Many dealerships had financial problems, and unfortunately a lot of them also had to close. Logistic chains were heavily disrupted at all levels, the manufacturing, supplier level, with negatively impact on production, but also on R&D activities. To face these challenges, we had to react very quickly. Like many other industrial sectors, we introduced new safety protocols, working from home policies were feasible, and shorter shifts in assembly just to cope with the sharp drop in demand. The situation has stabilized since then, and if you look at the latest market figures, it's quite clear that motorcycle registrations are progressively returning back to normality. And unlike other industries, the motorcycle sector survived this crisis without public bailouts or without mass layoffs. This is a very important point. At the same time, when Europe is rethinking its industrial policy, this shows how important it is to have strong and export-oriented companies that can provide stable manufacturing jobs. In this sense, our latest estimates show that our sector amounts to nearly 390,000 jobs. It also contributes to the European GDP with more than 21 billion euros every year, and it generates revenue to tax authorities of about 16.6 billion euros every year. Now, economic metrics and market figures are important, but they don't tell the whole story. The benefits of motorcycling is also a societal dimension. Due to their reduced size, fuel efficiency, two-wheelers are perfect for mobility in urban areas. And they bring important benefits in terms of time saved and reductions in emissions. There is also an important leisure component to motorcycling. Many people go into motorcycling not simply for commuting, but also for the sheer pleasure of riding. Motorcycling is an important hobby for millions of people. I believe this is also an important societal dimension. The numbers of two-wheelers in Europe are quite impressive. We estimate that there are about 40 million vehicles in use on Europe's road today. So we are talking about an important part of Europe's mobility system, which, in my opinion, should be part of the thinking of policymakers on local, national, and European level at the same time. This is something we will probably touch during our discussions. But we are here today not to talk just about the current situation, but mainly to look into the future. And here are two major questions, very important. What will mobility look like in 2030 or even 2050? And what role will two-wheelers play in that future mobility? Of course, these are questions not easy to answer. Many factors will come into the play, different policies, technical development and acceptance, consumer preferences, available infrastructure, just to name a few. The motorcycle industry has a vision, which we will be presenting today. But I think I can already see part of the future of the two-wheeler industry today here in this room. The future of the motorcycling sector will entail a combination of electric powertrains and e-fueled powered vehicles as part of the transformation of mobility in Europe. This progressive shift in technology will help us to continue contributing to climate change mitigation and to preserving the environment whilst delivering innovative, affordable, and efficient products to both leisure and urban mobility. Our members will also continue working on areas that have significant potential to further improve the sustainability of our products, not only for the environment, but also enhance the safety and well-being of customers and citizens alike. Here you can think, for example, on the ongoing and solid close cross-industry cooperations in the areas of decarbonization, digitalization, and road safety. We will also touch upon these topics during our discussions, which I look forward to. All of these collective efforts are part of our vision at the Horizon 2030 and beyond, what we call our Vision 2030. And they will be shape not only the future of our industry, but also the future of the mobility in Europe. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you will enjoy this conference. We now start with a panel discussion. I would like to give back to our moderator, Alet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus. Very happy to be able to facilitate this panel discussion with eminent leaders that you see sat in front of you from the motorcycle industry, from NGOs, from policymakers, and we'll also hear shortly from some guests online as well, bringing the international dimension to this conference. And I think it's a really important moment here where ACEM is announcing its vision towards sustainable mobility in Europe. We will for sure look for the views of the entire ecosystem, but we also count on you. We'd like to make this an interactive discussion as well. So for those of you in the audience, when you'd like to raise a question or make a comment or respond to some of the remarks, please do raise your hand. The microphone will come to you, and we ask you to stand up and introduce yourself and ask your question. And also for those of you online, I think there's 1,000 of you joining online, you'll have the chance as well to ask your questions, and I'll be facilitating and bringing those to the members as we go. Just in terms of structure, I'm shortly going to ask for some opening remarks for some of the different panelists, and then we're also going to dive into 3 of the areas that are maybe particularly important when it comes to sustainable mobility. First of all, around the environment and the environmental aspects. Secondly, around some of the health aspects of mobility, for example, around noise and safety. And then also sustainability in terms of economic prosperity and growth. So we'll go through those questions in turn through the course of the next 70 minutes and save some time for Q&A at the end as well to make it a really interactive discussion. So to kick us off, I'd firstly like to introduce Nan, who's Head of Safety and Mobility at the World Health Organization. Mr. Nan Tran, nice to speak to you and thanks for joining us online. Could you start by setting the international perspective on sustainable mobility? What is the WHO's perspective on sustainable mobility and what it means for power two-wheelers?
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to join you, even virtually. I would have liked to have been able to join you in person, but that wasn't possible. So I guess this is the next best thing. I'm really and again, really happy to be part of this conversation because we think, obviously sustainability is a really important part of what WHO has been advocating for from a number of perspectives. Obviously, from the environmental impact of mobility, that's a major concern, but we also recognize, as you've already said, the other benefits of thinking about the sustainable mobility and its relationship to sustainability, including, for example, having more promotion of more active modes of mobility, such as walking and cycling, and use of all alternative modes of transport. From my perspective, I think there's 2 main reasons why framing road safety in the context of sustainable mobility is extremely important. The first is that we recognize and we really want to advance this idea that road safety is part of a broader system. And we recognize, for example, that achieving road safety is not only done through having better infrastructure, having better vehicles. It is actually achieved through having a healthier modal mix. And that includes, for example, motorcycles, it includes cars, it includes more public transport, but it also includes a mix of walking and cycling. So the idea here is that we are trying to suggest that actually thinking about mobility in this way means that we should be thinking about what is the optimal mix of transport in a given location. And in some places, that is going to be more motorcycles. In some places, that's going to be more cars. In some places, it's going to be more public transport. But the idea is that there's no one set model. And what we need to strive to do is to think about how do we optimize the modal mixes in a way that is healthier, that is safer, but also more sustainable. The second reason that we really value this notion of sustainability and inclusion of road safety within the Sustainable Development Goals is because we really do emphasize the idea that mobility is constantly evolving. What we have witnessed over the last 2 years as a result of COVID is that, in fact, our patterns, our preferences for mobility are not static. They are a function of how we live and how we work. And obviously, as the conditions change, we also change. And so it is really this idea that mobility and transport systems are not set in stone, and we don't have to think about it in that way. And what that means for road safety is that we then need to continue to think about safety, not as a one-time intervention or a one-time action that we need to do, but rather as a constant that we must always think about. And we've been pushing for this idea that road safety should be actually seen as a value or considered as a value. And so that as mobility systems evolve, we ensure that safety is a heart of that. And I think that that's really why WHO has been pushing so much for road safety to be contextualized within the Sustainable Development Agenda, because again, it offers us many opportunities to link to other development goals and to benefit from those resources and those actions. But it also really emphasizes the fact that we need to constantly think about mobility as a value that should be at the core of all transport systems, and that we always need to think about it as systems evolve. So I think, from our perspective, that's where we're coming from. We're really looking at this as an opportunity to think more broadly about mobility and transport, and recognizing that part of that equation means that we actually do have to diversify the modes of transport, and that it's not possible for any one system to only have one mode of transport, and it can't be just cars, and it can't just be public transport. It has to be a mix, and it's about achieving the right mix and the optimal mix that is healthy, sustainable, and safe.
For those introductory remarks. Now I'd like to pass the microphone, virtually at least, to Veronique Fapel of the International Transport Forum, where she is Manager for Road Safety. Be good to please share your thoughts from the ITF's perspective on sustainable mobility and what that means for the powered two-wheeler sector.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to see you. I'm sorry I was not able to be in Brussels with you today, but still nice to take part. So yes, mobility and road safety are key pillars of the International Transport Forum program of work. Recent work on mobility has focused, for example, on mobility as a service. We worked a lot also on the issue of micro-mobility, especially as the COVID crisis has seen the importance of addressing this mode of transportation. We worked as well on mobility in remote areas to avoid that people get isolated. And more generally, we worked on how to promote sustainable urban mobility. And of course, road safety is a key component of a sustainable urban mobility. And ITF has been promoting for several years the notion of safe system. Actually, ITF was one of the pioneers to promote the adoption of safe system in all countries. And we are very pleased that today's safe system is the backbone of the UN resolution on road safety and the new decade of action for road safety. And as a matter of fact, following the Stockholm conference, the ITF, together with the industry and Motorcyclist Association, organized this year a workshop on motorcycling safety, which really focused on the main recommendation of the Stockholm Ministerial Conference and see how, what they mean for motorcycling safety. So we discuss issues such as model shift, sustainable practices, infrastructure, vehicle, post-crash care, and the issue of the mobility of young people, which is also a question very important regarding motorcycling mobility. So that's it for my introduction.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thanks for joining us. So now I'd like to invite some of the industry leaders that we have from the motorcycle sector, motorcycle manufacturers. We've already heard from Marcus, but I'll pass the floor in a second to Michele Colonnino, Director of Piaggio, where he's Chief of Global Strategy and Product. Michele, what are your perspectives, personal perspectives on sustainable mobility, and how is that being applied at Piaggio?
Well, thank you very much for your introduction, Marcus, and all appreciate for these two speakers that are for sure for me very interesting. Well, I think that as an entrepreneur, I have to respect responsibility for all the stakeholders I have and all the jobs we create every year, but taking in mind that we have also the responsibility to create a better world in mobility. And that's our job every day. We are investing a lot of money in safety for sure, because we think that the best we can create for safety issues, with the best is for our consumers and also for our people living in the cities. And the other issues is the environmental project, and we are forecasting to fulfill in 2030 for sure, taking in mind that we cannot do everything as entrepreneurs and as a business leaders. we need to speak with politicians and work together on a common decision that should take care of each of us. So our business, for sure, should respect the fact that the world climate change is an issue and is terrifying us. So I don't want my kids to live in a world like this in the next years. That's why we are, investing in different technologies to sustain this decarbonization for mobility, lightweight mobility where we are. And we are also investing in pedestrian mobility. We have a company in Boston working on drones and robots, cooperating with MIT and Harvard. So every field of micro and lightweight mobility is our interest. And I think that what the Commission here is doing and what the European Parliament is doing is correct. Having said that, we should work together because it's impossible to fulfill every need. So we need time, and we need to speak each other to be sure that we have rules that are effective and that cannot be interpreted by, other local, let me say, politics. So the three main pillars of the Piaggio Group all around the world where we act, so it's not just Europe, is to sustain mobility going forward in decarbonization through the use of different technologies, so not just electric, but we think about hydrogen, we think about biofuel, and we think of everything that can help this to reach this goal, and safety. So those are the pillars, not forgetting that we would like to give some, happy and joyful life to our riders. That, by the way, it's what the two-wheel vehicles was born for, to give freedom, joy, and useful commuting travel. What I have to say for the Horizon 2020 is that we work very, very deep in this kind of field. We are very happy to work with the Commission and to work with the European Union. But once again, we have to respect each other and the stakeholders of each other, companies and politics. So not forgetting that jobs creation is one of the major issues that we have to foresee.
Thank you very much, Michele, and for sure we'll come back on that theme of together later during the discussion when we hear from the European Commission and the European Parliament as well. But I'd like to pass the floor to another President, Eric Dessaines, President of Yamaha Motor Europe. Could you share your thoughts, Eric, on sustainable mobility and the vision towards 2030 for power two-wheelers?
Thank you very much for this easy question, which is super short, super compact. So obviously, I will underline some points already expressed by Michele, because finally, when you are producing and manufacturing two-wheelers, power two-wheelers, you are always connected with your customers, with your users. Everything we do has always been to enrich the quality of life of our customers, and especially in terms of mobility, because finally mobility is perhaps one of the first human rights, freedom, and freedom today means to have this capacity to use mobility means and to transport ourselves and to travel or just to commute. And during all the past years, obviously, Yamaha has always been working to progress, to improve, and to develop new sustainable arguments and realities. So, as many of our competitors, we have been working for many years, even decades, about hydrogen, electric. The problem and the complexity of our industry is that when you see a two-wheeler, you need two major qualities, lightness and capacity. Because a part of the safety of our vehicle is coming from the lightness. And you can understand that today we can embark more or less 40 kilos of battery on a power two-wheeler. But we cannot embark 1 ton of batteries, like a Tesla. So we are supposed to transport 2 persons, 1 rider, 1 passenger, with 40 kilos. Do you see any car today, electric car, with 160 kilo battery to transport 4 people? No, it doesn't exist. And this is the difficulty we have, is that today the technology is not aligned with the concept of our vehicle, or with a lot of constraints and limitation. So we are working hard, we do our best, but we cannot also invent a technology which is not mature enough to be adapted to our product as we would like, with the level of quality our customers are looking for. So obviously we are working in many technologies, electric, but not only electricity, also hydrogen or other solution. E-fuel is also a clear direction. And we work as much as we can. And I will support, to finalize this intro, I would like to also give the importance of the coherence. Today, when you are a manufacturer like us in Europe, we have in front of us finally 3 different layers. We have the European Commission, and we work already quite well with European Commission to define the future regulation, where we will go in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. But then you have the states, who sometimes are quite creative. And then after you have the city, who are ultra creative. And actually, this is the one who can show his muscle and show that he moves quicker than the others. They don't take care about the citizen, the industry, no, they don't care. They apply. And this is a big danger, because 80% of the European population is big city resident. So they have a huge power who can destroy totally what we finally agree at the European level. So it's time to align and stop to try to be a magician in Paris or in other cities, and let's try to be consistent. And we all support a better future, for sure, but we need this coherence. And this is something which is missing today, and I hope that perhaps with this conference, some ears will listen some words, trying to be clever. We try.
Perfect, thank you. And you mentioned in there about mobility being a human right, and sometimes, unfortunately, mobility doesn't work. Mr. Roland Berger is on the phone. He spent 4 hours in a plane trying to get here this morning, and ended up back in his own house in Vienna. But still very happy, Roland, that you can join us, President of Honda Motor Europe. Roland, can you share your views on sustainable mobility and that horizon towards 2030?
It's hard to come to Brussels, but it wasn't to be. I represent Honda, the biggest manufacturer, and also with a significant presence in Europe, with a production facility, Italy, Spain, and R&D facilities, also Italy, Germany, or UK. And basically our aim is to make a little bit different perspective to my predecessor speakers. We produce where the market is. So market in Europe is big. Sustainability has been mentioned often. It is not just a word. It is done often, and this industry is a little bit different to other industries. As real evidence may count that, for example, Honda, we have reduced the fuel consumption of two-wheelers since 2001 by more than 30%. And also, of course, we are going to zero emission and total carbon neutrality latest by 2050 as it is required. As also mentioned today, there are 2 challenges ahead of us, or there are probably more, but 2 are main challenges. One is safety. This is probably the bit more urgent one, and the second is electromobility. On the two-wheeler safety, we are working closely together with 20 companies, producers, OEMs, suppliers, and research companies in the so-called Connected Motorcycle Consortium. So different to other industry, this industry, big competitors, because these guys in the end of the market can sit together if it has to be better for the total industry. And so we try to develop a device which shows to other traffic users, mainly to cars, that there are two-wheelers also, avoiding blind spots or the majority of our left turn accidents. And since January this year, we already are in development and try to talk to the car manufacturers to apply our messages for a better safety in future. Also, Eric de Sainz has very clearly explained, we cannot put a ton or more batteries in our mobility because Our mobility is lightness. And so in order to cope with the problem, also with the problem that loading station is a little bit a very rare case in Europe in this time. On 6th of September, we founded the swappable battery motorcycle consortium together. Mr. Colognini is here, Piaggio, KTM, and Yamaha. We'd like to promote the widespread of light vehicles with addressing the customer concerns, because in the end, the customer has to choose and to pay for buying a product on electric range, charging time, and infrastructure. To be a little bit less technical, we will have one battery, and this battery is in a Piaggio scooter. You can take it out, put it in a KTM motorcycle or in a Honda motorcycle, or you put it in a roadside loading station and take a charged one out into your mobile device. Then you have much less battery weight. You are not no need to search for the roadside loading stations, and still you have the mobility like you have today. Last but not least, please also allow me, I have been long in two-wheeler industry. There is never one solution. And also in the two-wheeler, probably there is not the one solution, only electric. To get net zero CO2 emissions, one idea would be sustainable fuel, ecological, sustainable and synthetical fuel, which can be used in a later stage. Eric Desens already mentioned it. Hydrogen is also a solution which work easily on two-wheelers. So also following Eric Desens, I would like to hope that we get a government environment down to cities where we can really develop. Because if you let me share one more thought, even if it is a little negative, any car driver which moves from his car, average, to a two-wheeler scooter, reduce his CO2 footprint by 3/4, and with electro even further. So there is a solution. We contribute to decarbonization already. Let's go together and make this more common also together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roland. So we've now heard from the motorcycle industry, their perspectives of how they see sustainable mobility, some of the actions they're taking, but also maybe some of the challenges of what it means specifically for power two-wheelers. I'd like to invite Claire Dupre now to respond and share the European Commission's perspective. Claire is Head of Unit for Road Safety at DG Move. Claire?
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be physically with you today. You often say that when you have a bird, you try to get several stones. So in the room, I have a colleague from DG Grow, Mehdi is with us, Mattia from DG Environment, and Isabelle, with whom I have been working for quite some time, is still responsible of urban mobility in DG Move. And so yes, indeed, I'm now in charge of road safety, but have been working on ITS, urban mobility, and alternative fuels for quite some time. So what is our vision in terms of the transport sector? Maybe I would like to come a stage above, and maybe just to mention that I think you won't find any of us telling you that we are not trying to work on jobs and on economy. And I think that if we look at the transport sector, this is maybe primary function number one, to make sure that actually we move, we can live, we have a decent quality of life, but we also contribute not to make the world worse than actually it is today. And if we look at the last 2 years, being for the pandemic or being for any type of environmental disruption we have seen, I think that the word already cannot be used anymore. So I'm getting closer to my 50s, and of course when I talk to my son, my world was much better than his, but it's not there anymore. So continue just business as usual, I think it's not practice for any of us, and for any transport means in the transport sector. Now, I have listened carefully to what you have said. So I think that if you talk to the aviation sector, if you talk to the maritime sector, if you talk to the road transport sector or the railway transport sector in general, everyone has his own specificity. Everyone has its own obstacle, challenges. But if we take it from the angle of the fuels in general, I think that as transport sector, as road transport sector, we also need to understand that some others do not have a lot of different solutions. And so where we can, we have to move to zero, which is actually very good because it's zero in terms of emission and zero in terms of safety. So again, one bird, two stones. And so we will have conventional vehicle for quite some time. But I'm just asking maybe to the colleagues here, how do you see, and we know that cities, I'm looking at police now, that cities are, because of the peculiar situation and you know, they are really living lab for many, many aspects, including at policy level. So do we really see that we end up with a situation in which we have cars which are much more performance than the power two-wheeler sector? That I think will become more and more complicated while we are also seeing cities adopting measures and trying to support low and zero emission mobility. The more, and not even because of the lawmaking, but again I'm looking at Isabel, the more while we see that actually cities are gathering themselves around very ambitious agenda. There's a lot of action in terms of mission and efforts around the climate neutral city by not 2050, 2030. So to all of you, what I want to say is that we are ready to help. I think each and every one is ready to help. I don't think that we have a colleague from DG Research also in the room. Guido was supposed to be with us. But certainly, this recovery needs to include you as a sector, but we are also willing to work with you on solution and make this transition as quickly as possible. Sorry.
Thanks very much, Claire. And then the final panelist I'd like to introduce now is Mr. Ismail Ertug, member of European Parliament. Ismail, I understand you've also just been called back to the European Parliament, so you're going to have to leave a little bit sooner into the debate, but I'd like to start off now by inviting you to respond to some of the comments that you've heard, and also outline your own vision towards sustainable mobility and the role that power two-wheelers play.
Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. As I said earlier, I'm from Bavaria, and we are normally used to speak very frankly and directly, and I would lie if I say that the two-wheelers had the same significance in the past as the cars had. So I think we should be honest when we talk about this, but that does not mean that this has to stay like this. When we talk now about the challenges for the future, we have to use every leverage, every technology, every participant in the mobility chain, first to make it for sure sustainable, and second, when we talk about two-wheelers, motorcycles, as often said, have to make it more safe. When we talk about the individual mobility, we have to see, I don't know who was that, but already mentioned, individual mobility has to be guaranteed even in the future. We have not only urban areas, not in Germany, not in France, all around the European Union, we have areas where the people are living in rural or outermost regions. And even if you talk about urban areas, you see sometimes it makes more sense to ride a bike or a motorcycle rather than driving a car. Therefore, we have to talk about two-wheelers in the future when we talk about cars as well. I think maybe a little bit of putting empathy to us politicians or to the colleagues in the Commission. If you have around 240 million vehicles on the streets of the European Union, I think it's understandable that the main focus was in the past mainly on the cars. But as I said, we have to deliver and we have to put the leverage all around the chain, and the two-wheelers has to be one of them. Maybe it's known here. If not, I'm the rapporteur for the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, where we talk about strategies. Strategies always future-oriented, should be future-proofed as well. And within this strategy, it was a good proposal by the European Commission. And I think you all know that the Commission here in the European Union always has the right for the initiative, and then the European Parliament has to respond. And within the strategy, we also include the two-wheelers perspective, mainly from the safety side. And as the European Union, we have our target, our main aim is the Vision Zero death, fatalities until 2050. And but when we look to the statistics, unfortunately, we have to see that the number of fatalities, in particular for two-wheelers, are increasing. And this should also be a part of our homework as politicians, how to make it safer. I think they are vulnerable road users for sure, and therefore we urgently have to improve their role within the mobility chain. But I don't want to miss to say that the future mobility has to be for sure sustainable, but it has to be also connected, and it has to be also I wouldn't say not autonomous in that sense, but automated. Yeah? Let me say it like this. And we should not only focus on cars when we talk about connectivity and connection with each other. Also, motorcycles and two-wheelers has to be connected, because they are part of the mobility, part of the traffic. And therefore, I would say these are, in my eyes, the challenges for the next weeks and months when it comes to the two-wheelers industry.
Thanks very much, Ismail. And I think both yourself and Claire have made comments around the kind of comparison between cars and power two-wheelers and the specificities of power two-wheelers when it comes to sustainable mobility. Maybe, Marcus, you want to comment from BMW, obviously active in both spaces. What are the specificities of power two-wheelers that we need to really take into account?
Yeah, I think it's really good for us to be part of the BMW group, and from my perspective, we have a very comprehensive sustainability strategy at BMW, and we at the two-wheeler division are part of this. So for me, it is important that we, of course, discuss the product issues, the technical issue on the product side for our customers. And we are convinced that, for instance, in urban areas, the electromobility will be very soon 100% in this area. So we clearly announced that we do not invent new models for urban mobility which are not electrically driven. But I also think that we go further in the latter part of this decade with also motorcycles being electrified, and I'm convinced that there will be demand as well. And of course, safety is for us, technology-wise, a very important part. I mean, we introduced ABS, we have it in all our bikes. We talked about the connected motorcycle consortium just to do to find solutions which are really helping us as part of the traffic. But the product side is one pillar of our sustainability strategy. The production side is also very important. So we are investing heavily, and we reduce by 2030 80% CO2 emissions in production. We're investing heavily into new paint shops to reduce water consumption by more than 70%. So it's not only the mobility part, it's a whole point, including the supply chain. I mean, we are already changing our behavior in nominating suppliers. If they are technically wise and economically wise, at the same level, we decide to those suppliers who say we are producing with green energy, just as an example. So we are already living this. And so we have a lot of opportunities to drive sustainability forward, and we're clearly committed to the Green Deal and also to the Paris goals. There's no discussion about this, but we need an open, multi-path approach to achieve this. We cannot do it one-fits-all solution. That is also within BMW Group our position.
Thanks very much, Marcus. So we've heard, I think, in the introductory comments that sustainable mobility has different facets, whether it be around safety, whether it be around accessibility, freedom. I'd like to come on in a second to talk around decarbonisation specifically. But maybe first of all, Antonio, coming from the ACEM's perspective, you've released the vision towards 2030. Can you maybe react a little bit on some of the key discussions you've heard now, and what are the most important elements of ACEM's vision towards 2030?
Thanks. Actually, I'm very positively surprised by the exchange we had, because I think we are all agreeing on what needs to be done and what is the specificities of the sectors we need to be aware of. The sector has been working for the last year and a half, roughly, on this Vision 2030. It goes beyond 2030, it looks at 2050 and carbon neutrality, as was said also by CEOs on the panel. We looked at this, and it's not a new development because we've been working on road safety. Claire, you were mentioning road safety. We've been very active on that specific aspect already for more than 10, 15 years, and looking very much ahead, how to make motorcycles connected. So that was already a huge part of our work. And in the safety area, we worked even beyond, I would say, what would be a traditional vehicle responsibility, vehicle manufacturer. We worked on issues such as training. So we've been expanding our work, recognizing that the specificity of our vehicles and our users is also their vulnerability. So we need to look beyond what would be a traditional car approach. We look at the whole, let's say, usage of the vehicle. But as I was saying, in the last, I would say, year and a half, we focused a lot on the Green Deal effects, and Fit for 55 was also an accelerator in a way for this reflection. How to basically complete the picture and look at all the other issues. We touched upon all of them already in the discussion. And one of the things I thought very interesting in what you were referring to, we are much smaller than the car sector. And we actually are saying exactly the same. We're also a much smaller problem than the car sector, if I may say. So the issue, of course, priority has been on the car, and rightly so, I would say, on emissions, I would say historically. The motorcycle sector has followed with maybe 10, 15 years, different timeline, simply because, of course, the number of kilometers and therefore the pollutants that were emitted in the atmosphere by the cars were much higher than the motorcycle sector. So we're taking the same view. We're saying, yes, we want to work on this together. We think this is very important. If I look at pollutants just for a second, when we moved from Euro 0, let's say from pre-Euro steps to Euro 3, we reduced by 94% local pollutants. We halved the remaining ones in Euro 4, and even again, we went another further step down for Euro 5. So on the internal combustion engine, we made a lot of progress. I think what we're saying here is that when you look at our vehicles, they're much more specialized than cars, and this is actually their perhaps most prominent advantage. The car is a one-size-fits-all purposes and all uses, and that is a good thing, but at the same time, it is also one of the shortcomings. For our vehicles, we have vehicles that are really tailored to the urban environment, and those we are, in our vision, saying that basically by 2030, the majority of these will be electric, as Marcus was saying, because we believe long-term, most likely, of course, the cities will have an impact also on this development, and the Commission is trying to make some sense of this diversity. I know that, it's not easy. But they will be looking for solutions which are clean, and we think we can provide that solution. So we have been providing them already. We want to make sure we can continue doing that. So it's actually a very proactive and positive approach in that sense. On the other hand, and you can see also here in the room itself, we have products which are really leisure orientated, and those are the products where indeed e-fuels and internal combustion engine, we believe, are part of the solution for the long term also, to make not only the vehicles, the new ones, cleaner, but also the existing fleet, which is a huge issue. In many cases, if you look at cars, but even more for motorcycles, the lifetime of a motorcycle will be in the area of 20 or even 25 years if we look at the bigger bikes. And obviously, we need to make sure that users are able to continue using the vehicle they've been purchasing for their leisure activities. So what I wanted to say, and it's very long, I mean, the vision we've been developing is actually looking at all these aspects. So I'm quite actually positive about the exchange because I believe we address all of them. We issued, and it's not the point to present this here because it is definitely too long, but we issued the vision with a series of position papers which are really tackling every single aspect of sustainability. I go back to the initial interventions by Nan Tran and Véronique Fepel. Obviously, we also looked at the wider picture, not only at Europe, we looked at the SDGs and UN priorities to make sure we would be fitting also with those priorities, conscious that Europe is, of course, progressively also then determining what will be the standards elsewhere around the world. So we are conscious of that, and that is why we take also this reference. So in a nutshell, even though it was much longer than a nutshell, I would say we are, I think, very much aligned. It's more an issue on how the detail would develop as we move forward.
Thanks very much, Antonio. And maybe let's start to crack the nut on one of those specific topics, being decarbonisation. We heard Claire in her comments saying that she was happy to help. So I'd like to invite the CEOs, the presidents from the motorcycle manufacturers to comment on what specific support would they be looking for from policymakers in order to accelerate that transition towards decarbonisation. What are some of the things and the barriers that are holding you back at the moment?
Perhaps I just would like to insist on one fact. There is always an easy shortcut to consider that what is applicable to cars has just to be applied on motorcycle, but it's not as easy like that. And I just would like to insist that we have many specificities which are in general not considered. The capacity of our vehicle means that the occupation on the ground is much less than a car, 20% of a car. The fact that our users are contributing to an easy flow and reducing the traffic jam, and at the end, reducing the total consumption related to transportation. So we have a lot of positive factors which are related to our product. And it's not just about technical application from this class to our class. The other point is that, again, we need capacity and lightness. But unfortunately, capacity and lightness cost more. I remember, and Marcus was mentioning the start of ABS technology. ABS technology, BMW has been the first one to apply. And the second one has been Yamaha in 1992. But I remember that we wanted to do so. But it was a shoebox at the beginning, the technology of ABS Central. How do you position a shoebox in a bike? And the value of the ABS was representing more than 10% of the total bike value. So we were in a corner. It's not because we didn't want. It was just not mature enough. The technology was not ready to be transposed on our industry. The last thing also I would like to mention, because we are here representing ACEM, and ACEM is the Association of the European Manufacturers. So all of us, we are producing in Europe. When we produce a scooter, 50cc, 4-stroke, Euro 4, Euro 5, catalyzer, the emission is around 30 grams CO2 per kilometer. And the consumption is less than 2 liters. And it's produced here in Europe. So you don't have to extract your lithium in South of America, to ship it to China, to get the battery, to ship back to Europe, and then you see the carbon balance at the end. We are super positive, if we are fair. If you just look the fact, it's super positive and contributing. So we don't say that we will do ICE combustion engine forever. We just say that we try to be respectful. We try to follow a sustainable direction which is strong and contributing to the society. But sometimes where the politicians would like to see us going is not today the best. And we have to discuss. We don't want to oppose. We want to build up a common solution. We want to show that there is some alternative and there are some products for which we are ready, we go. For some others, unfortunately, the total package is not valid today. And it's not because it will be forced, contracts, penalties, tickets to force the industry or the customers that it will run better. It's just factual. So we like to consider we have a roadmap, long-term strategy, where all of us, we can feel comfortable with, and then keep it quiet and go for it. But don't start to reinvent every 2 years. In the recent years, the motorcycle industry passed Euro 3 to Euro 4 in 16, Euro 4 to Euro 5 in 20, Euro 5 to Euro 5B in 3 years. Every 3 years, we changed the game to be more and more efficient in terms of sustainability and emissions. We are on that way. Please respect it, because this is huge investment. And this is investment, we are industrial. We must have a minimum of lifetime in front of us to get the reason of this investment valid. So obviously we want to contribute. Obviously we want to do our best for safety, for emission, for CO2. But speaking with mature people, all together, also for ourselves, we have also to be mature. I don't escape, I don't consider that we are out of the game. But this is, I want to insist, because our users, a bit provocative, but our users for me are generous. They accept to be cold, to take risks for their safety, to accept the rain, to finally make the total transportation easier for everybody in the cities. It should be rewarded instead of be punished.
Thanks very much, Eric. Anything to add, Marcus, Michele, anything to add in terms of specific hurdles you would like to see lifted or specific asks towards the policymakers?
If I may, it's clear that we have to fully follow the path of decarbonization in some way. What I think we should discuss about is the technology through which we reach the target. If we speak about just one piece of the world, so electricity, I think we are missing the other piece of the other pieces. Let us invent something. Let us invest in R&D. Let us, think about and use fantasy to, reach the target. So I think that politics should say the target and leave us free to reach the target. That is the aim. At the end of the game, the target is the real goal. It's not the means through which we reach the target. It could be hydrogen, it could be biocarburants, it could be electricity. I don't know, it could be something else. I'm not an engineer, but we're investing a lot in this field to fulfill the target. We fully agree that we have to be healthier tomorrow or the day after. So let's fix a target that is reasonable, that is cost effective for us. Otherwise, we can invest tons of money for Monday, but then we close the factory. And that would be negative for the social impact. So let's speak together, sit on the table and say, this is the target and this is the timeline. Leave us free to reach the target using different technologies that we can share. We are not, we're not jealous of technology. The consortium we created for the swapping batteries, we is a consortium to reach the goal, giving the customer the better solution to save money because he doesn't have to buy 4 different batteries, and to be commutable in the town with using vehicles, swapping batteries wherever they want. So it's not a Piaggio, KTM, Yamaha, Honda technology. So standardization is another aspect that we have to fulfill. Otherwise we miss the goal. And if we don't reach the goal, I think never of us will be happy.
May I add a tiny thing?
Yes, please do, Roland.
To be a bit more practical, not everything is bad or not everything is negative. What will help us as an industry is also a bit more cooperation and a bit more understanding each other. I give you one example. Yes, we do swappable batteries and we have studied a lot why we do and so on. And it is already mentioned in the AFIA, in the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Rules. We could, if we can discuss together how it is, because we already tested the swappable batteries, how it would be helpful, we can speed up the process, which finally means that the city mobility, if you call it this way, which is 55% about 1 to 5 cc equivalents, can be very quickly moved to electric and then contribute to much CO2 reduction. But this would need a process to talk to each other and not a process every 5 minutes there is something else, like, not to be very negative, but the charge idea, everything from an iPhone to a Tesla has to have the same charger, which technically will not work. It may have the same plug. So working a bit more together for the same goal would help. And I totally agree to Mr. Colanino and also to the others. There need to be multiple technology possible, because we may not yet know the perfect solution, but there is a perfect solution. It just needs a little bit of time to arrive there.
Thanks very much. And I see Claire is sat on the edge of her seat ready to respond here.
Please.
Maybe first to say that I think we are always technological neutral. So every single legislation that you see in all sectors, but including on the sustainability part, is not saying to you, you have to use that fuel or that other fuel. It says, please reach that level of ambition. Now, second point, I'm not aware about any legislation or proposal from the Commission affecting the power two-wheeler when it comes to CO2 emission. We don't have colleagues from DG Klima, but I know that they are actively working on a proposal to revise the heavy-duty vehicle requirements, which, by the way, have also their own specificities, and so they don't have the compact, the capacity aspect, but they carry a lot of weight, which also brings other type of challenges. But so you don't have legislation on the table, isn't it, yourself? What is certainly expected is that indeed you contribute to the climate law.
Mm-hmm. But I think that is a very important statement. We agree that we don't have a clear regulation yet, but we are fearing that the discussion goes in the wrong direction, and that is why we are pleading for an open discussion with us. But also, I think we had some example here, be it the swappable batteries, be it the discussion on ABS, on safety, a technical solution. Competition always brings the best solution, and we need from the politician that this competition is possible, and we are not forced into directions where competition is not existing anymore. And we are open to further discussion, and I think we have good technical solutions already, because we are not thinking from today onwards. So we already discussed it in the past. So I'm pretty much convinced that we can achieve climate neutral mobility on the two-wheelers, but we should not focus on one technology. We need more. And when we see with the Fit for 55, when I read the target on e-fuels, it doesn't make a difference whether you have the target or not. So we feel that the technical solution which will really fit to us are not on the same table as electromobility driven by the big transportation means like cars. And that is our fear, that we are not that important than the car industry, but we should not be forgotten.
But at the same time, and I want to get back to the points of Honda, I think that because of the fact that you are probably a smaller sector compared to many other players in the road transport sector, and maybe the challenges are sometimes indeed a little bit more complicated to address. And I go back to the connectivity aspect. I think you have been moving much quicker than others in trying to understand the problem at stake and trying to find some certain solution and be ready the moment others would be ready. Do the same. Cooperate more. Voilà. If it's not exactly the same solution that needs to be applied and you need to change, slightly adjust the business model, give it a try. Because what will happen otherwise? Unfortunately, we cannot, I'm not a mayor, nor is the president of the commission. And so mayors, that's the subsidiarity principle. They decide for the policies that are more relevant for them. So if the world is going into that direction and we stay here, you won't get customers anymore. And we want your jobs. We want your jobs to continue to flourish. So we have the same objective, we have the same interest. And we need to probably to fine-tune a little bit the strategies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Antonio, you wanted to respond or add something there?
Yeah, actually, Claire said part of what I wanted to say. Okay. I think the challenge, you're correct, we do not have a regulation for the two-wheeler sector, and we're, to be clear, not asking for one, to be clear immediately, but we are, because we know the world is going, of course, towards 2050 goals, we also know we will have our share to do, and this is perfectly accepted, provided we can, from the beginning, try to support the definition of that effort. How would it be most convenient for us to be done? What would be the differences? So what we're doing here, if you like, we're trying to use the current momentum there is with the discussion focusing mainly on cars to make sure, what Eric was saying, there is not this approach that is basically saying, well, whatever is done for cars, it will be simply photocopied, will apply to motorcycles 5 years down the line, because we don't want that, we couldn't work with that. This is exactly the point. And the point you were also making, which was the point I wanted to make, is the fact that the cities, however, are going in a direction that is focusing a lot on zero emissions and electric mobility, basically phasing out of IC technology. And the more big cities are moving at an horizon 2030, 35 is something that is not within your hands, and we recognize that because you don't have power over that. The cities are in the room here today. We are trying to show to the cities also that we are part of the solution. We were already before this event, because as we were saying, CO2 pollutants coming from a smaller, lighter vehicle are already much lower than a standard car. No matter what you might say about it, it will be, of course, the case. And obviously, it also means that some of the electric vehicles, the cars, might still be more interesting to use a internal combustion two-wheeler for the next years to come, until we are in the position to make that 100% application later than 2030. So the challenge here is how to align, if you like, basically what is within the powers of the Commission, and knowing that subsidiarity as such is going to generate this patchwork of regulations, which are very difficult to work with, I think also for the citizens, but for us making the investment, and again going back to what Mr. Ertug was saying, with the limited size we have and the lower economies of scale, it does make it even more challenging, because we have almost, I wouldn't say to make individual vehicles, that would be it's a caricature, but I would say we are forced to really start thinking about making investments which at the end of the day are very different to have a return on. And this is really the challenge. So again, no regulation is here at European level. We're just trying to accompany the debate and make sure we put the foot in the door, if you like, in a positive way, to be clear, to show you that we have solutions in mind. We are, and I see also people here that are taking part in the research platforms. We're making sure also within those discussions we inject also what are the needs of the sector, so that the Commission can also potentially support this kind of investment being made by the companies. So it's a very positive, proactive approach.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Antonio. I'd like to, in a second, see if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to comment and react to some. So we'll come over to you in a second. But maybe first, Ismail, Mr. Ertug, you've recently been appointed rapporteur on the revision of the alternative fuel infrastructure. As we were just saying, maybe also you want to comment and react to some of the comments from Antonio.
I also have to smile when I'm on the panel here together with Claire, because she was responsible for that, and I have to thank her for this, for that she hold her promise as Commission in order to come up with a new AFID regulation. This time, AFIR, not AFID anymore. This was a big success in my eyes, because we need in the future definitely binding targets for those who are responsible, which are mainly in the public area, the member states, or even go a little bit lower, the regional areas. The different member states have different histories, different structures. We in Germany, we have the so-called Stadtwerke, for example, which is a little bit well known in Austria maybe, but even when you go to the east or even to the south, it's not really well known. That does mean the public hand has mainly the responsibility for this kind of infrastructure on a public part. I think the challenge is, as always, you can spend the euro just once, and money is always limited, and the question will come up, even to me now, in the Parliament, for which kind of infrastructure you want to use this €1. So there are many actors, many stakeholders, all of them want to get the money, which is understandable. But in the end, and this is the difficulty, you as politician, you are always, I wouldn't say that you are the scapegoat, but you are always in the spotlight of the discussion. You, correctly, and I understand this, you as stakeholders, you want to know in which direction the policymakers want to go, and therefore you have to calculate, you want to have to steer your business cases. Fully understand. But at the same time, the mobility is so fragmented, or fragmented with the technology, also in the mindset, that all of them want to get something from you, and you have to decide now. Your decision from today will have some result in 7 to 10 years. Therefore, this is the challenge. And when we discuss, and I heard and I know this arguments even from the OEMs, the same argument: technological neutrality. It has to be a business case. You should never forget the customers, because they have to buy your products in the end, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. And all in all, it's a challenge, a big challenge, to take the right decision now in order to reach the target for the future. This is also a little bit, in order to understand a little bit the European Commission's approach, the European Commission, and also we as the parliamentarians, we have our experts. On a technological level, you have studies, you have universities, you have Fraunhofer Institute, and so on, and so on, and so on, and all of them gave you some direction. They say, if you go this path, you could reach this one. If you go this path, maybe not. And when it comes to technological neutrality, to be honest, the same discussion we have here is the same discussion on the OEM level. They say, is it necessary to use money for the change or the reverse of renewable energies in a liquid version or in another version, in order to put it into a combustion and to burn it once again? Why not use it directly in electrification? I think a possible way to bring Greens together, maybe with the little bit more conservatives, could be the discussion on existing stock of vehicles, because we have millions of cars, and we will have millions of cars, not millions, but maybe thousands of different motorcycles all around, with a combustion engine for the next 7, 10, 15 years. And the discussion on the technological neutrality will come up. In any case, it will come up. And I don't want to hide that there are, on the political area, forces who want to go really one direction, which is electrification. And I don't want to hide that. I don't belong to them. I support the technology of electrification, but as politician, I have learned in the last 12 and a half years, your truth is not the only truth. You have to always be realistic. And in the end, I think, you said that from Piaggio, that in the end, the target must be reached and achieved. And the planet don't care about where the emission comes from. It comes from cars or forestry or agriculture. In the end, it has to be CO2 neutral in 2050. And we in Germany, 2045, for example. Therefore, it's not easy. It will be challenging. I don't promise anything here. To be frank, where I should that I'm not in the situation. I'm not the only one dealing there. I'm a responsible person, but I can tell you that even the difficulties right now, what I have within a strategy, I never had that before. Not even in legislation where I was responsible, we had such a fight when it comes now to the strategy. There are many politicians, not expectedly, to be honest, in the past, the liberals, for example, when you talk to them, they are open, they are mainly oriented to the future. Sometimes we have some of them, they really doubt that, I don't want to say that climate change happens, but they don't want to change anything. More conservative than the conservatives in the ECR maybe, and that makes it so difficult for us. That's the reason why the strategy is not finalized yet. because we are fighting in a political sense. But all in all, as I said, coming back, you have €1 and you can spend it once, and we have to spend it in a good way.
Thanks very much.
Can I come in here for a second?
Please.
So I'm not an expert on technology, and nor am I an expert on the regulations governing motorcycle usage. But what I would like to say in listening to this discussion is that I think the technology and technological aspects of this is one part of the equation. From our perspective at WHO and in our conversations, looking at the situation globally, we look at sustainability not only from the carbon neutrality, but also from the sustainability of transport systems. And we know, for example, our perspective is that the existing transport systems as they are now are simply not viable for the future. And by that, we mean that transport systems that are overly reliant on cars, are unsafe, are unsustainable, and are polluting. So for me, part of, I think, the narrative shift that needs to happen is to reframe how do motorcyclists and power two-wheelers fit into a future mobility system. And in the global plan that we have just launched for road safety, we actually emphasize the importance of having a modal mix that is diverse, that does include motorcycles, that does include walking and cycling and public transport. So for me, when we're talking about the sustainability, the viability of transport and the argument that you're needing to make, I think part of the argument that needs to be made here is that how do motorcyclists or how do motorcycles as a means of transport fit into this new system, this new transport mix that we want to have for the future? Because the existing mix that we have now is one that we don't want for a number of reasons. They're unsafe, they're not sustainable, they're not green, and et cetera, et cetera. They don't encourage active mobility. So I think part of the challenge that needs to happen within the motorcycle industry is to reframe the narrative. And it's not just about saying that motorcycles are less polluting. It's about saying that motorcycles actually contribute to a healthier mix. Motorcycles actually enable or better for shorter trips, because that's really what we're moving towards. We're really saying we don't need to commute 30, 40 kilometers to go to the office anymore. And nobody wants that. This is what we've heard from COVID for the last 2 years. And so I think the opportunity, the challenge, and the opportunity for the industry is to say, actually, yes, we fit into that. We can actually contribute to this better modal mix in a number of ways, because motorcyclists facilitate shorter trips. They actually facilitate, less congestion in traffic. So I think, yes, the carbon neutrality is a big part of it, and the technologies to achieve that is a big part of that. But I think the other part of that is really making the compelling case to say that actually we fit into the future because motorcyclists and power two-wheelers correspond, or the way that they work, fit well with this idea of a more balanced mix of transport in cities and urban environments. And I think that's what city mayors want to hear. We've had discussions with cities, and this is what they're telling us. Yes, they obviously are very concerned about the climate impact, but they're also concerned about the viability of urban transport systems, which are becoming overloaded and which are not viable systems anymore. So I guess it's a suggestion or a reflection to say that, yes, I think all of these things are important, but I think that there's an opportunity here for you to reframe the sustainability discourse for motorcyclists, not just around the cleanliness of the fuels or the technologies, but really thinking about the fact that, power two-wheelers fit into this vision of a more healthy and balanced modal mix that is actually more sustainable in the long term.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tran. And before I invite the industry to maybe respond to that, I'd like to invite our audience member, if you could stand up and introduce yourself and then ask your question into the microphone.
Well, yet otherwise, there we go. My name is Benjamin Krieger, and thank you first of all for the invitation, also for the opportunity to ask a question. I will come to a question at the end. I'm representing CLEPA, that's the Automotive Suppliers Association. Certainly we have quite an overlap also when it comes to two-wheelers. It's not only about cars. When Mr. Ertug, you made your statement just now about technology neutrality, I thought, oh, I have to come up with a new question now quickly, because you mentioned quite a few points that are indeed important from our point of view. I make a step forward then, and I say electromobility is an important solution for the future. And this comes now clearly more from the perspective of the automotive suppliers industry. It will play an important role in the future, and it will help incredibly to bring down CO2 emissions. But we also need to see that electromobility is not, maybe not yet, but it is not yet the solution for every application. We need mobility in cold areas where you will have challenges recharging your batteries. You will need a solution to transport goods over longer distances, or if you want to travel over longer distances, electromobility is getting there, but it maybe is not yet the best solution, and maybe it's not the most sustainable solution. So what we are arguing for, what we are calling for, is really to leave technological choice for those applications where we really need it. Where electromobility is the best solution, it will win, and it will win markets. And in that sense, Ms. Dupré, I think when it comes to us taking the challenges and changing, I don't think that's the question. I think everyone here in this room agrees, or definitely the industry agrees, that this is necessary. And I can speak for my own members. We are taking the challenges. What we have difficulties with is if we are being put in a too restrictive environment for organizing our businesses. And when looking at the CO2 regulation for cars and vans, the only solution to achieve zero emission at the tailpipe is electromobility, is the battery electric vehicle or the fuel cell electric vehicle. And that is where our members come to us and ask me, Benjamin, is this really technology open? And there I think I run into difficulties really explaining how it is technology open or technology neutral. Although formally, sure it is, but in reality, it is a de facto ban on one technology that we will further need. When looking at the climate conference in Glasgow, there was a relevant declaration coming out of it, supported by quite a few stakeholders, quite a number of stakeholders. But I would also like to point that it has not been supported by everyone there. And there are clearly a few really big gaps in the support for this declaration. I would ask why that is. We have also seen joint activities by the US and China, which are very important markets, certainly for mobility and for cars. I would wonder, where are the EU's ideas in these discussions? Are they part of it? Are we as attractive with the way that we are going forward as we would want to be? And I ask this question sincerely because I would like European policy to succeed. And we all share the overall ambition to achieve climate neutrality. But I wonder whether we are really taking the right way forward. One more word on employment. We are finalizing a study on the impact of the CO2 regulation on employment in the industry in the European Union. The results are frightening, to say the least, for some of the regions where the industry is strong currently. We have a total of 1.7 million directly employed. We are looking at 500,000 jobs at risk. That's a third of the industry. So again, looking at competitiveness, looking at global markets, are we convinced that we are going the right way forward, or would it not make sense to leave technology openness, at least for those niches where we need other solutions, where consumers demand other solutions than what currently is being proposed in electromobility? And that would be my question. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Benjamin. A lot to unpick there around technology neutrality, potential gaps in the COP26 agreement. I'd like to invite or ask which panel member would like to respond. Antonio?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were also looking, of course, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I'll make it quick. I agree with with what you said, and I think when you look at the COP26 conclusions, the fact that some of the big countries that have an automotive industry did not sign up is no surprise. I think we can only but agree to the objective. The point is how to get there should not be at the expense of the industry and the jobs that they're providing. So this is very important. Again, I say this really stating that we, I think, all support, and this is a key part of our vision. The key objective is completely subscribed. It's an issue of how you get there. This is really important. I'd like to just make a quick jump to the previous intervention by Nan. Again, we also agree entirely on what you were saying. I mean, the narrative is important. We tried over the years, and if you look at motorcycling, and we don't need to look back 60 or 70 years, but it was a mobility tool in the beginning. After World War II, it was the cheap transport, and I think it is still very convenient transport, and we want that to remain the case. I mean, the Vespa is here, it's the new Vespa, electric, but obviously it started off with being a way to move people and to access opportunities. I think we have still that narrative, and if anything now, if we look at the city environment, we believe there's a lot more that we can bring. Cities are moving away, as Nanyu was saying, from car-centric approach, trying to diversify the way they move people and goods. And again, here, we don't have any examples in the room here, but we also make three-wheeled and four-wheeled products, which are much smaller than the footprint of a car. They are much lighter, therefore much CO2 efficient in terms of energy. They can also support better logistics in the city. These are, I think, topics which are extremely important to the whole of Europe to make sure that we have a better transport system, as you were saying. So it's all part of what we are describing in the vision. Obviously too detailed for today's discussion, but something we look forward to engage with stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Antonio. Mr. Ertug, I know you're going to need to be, being called back to the European Parliament imminently. Any final comments that you'd like to make before you head off in terms of what you've heard today, the questions from Klepper as well?
Yes, I think it's not a surprise. We are in close conversation with Klepper and with the supply industry at all, and we know the problems and the challenges for them. We know, I think you said 500,000 working places are at risk, and the unfortunate thing is that we have a high number of non-shiftable working places, in particular in the supplier industry. And by the way, this is the difference between, I would say, social democrats like me and the Greens maybe. Maybe from the outside and you look, you see, okay, they are always on the same side. But the difference between social democrats and Greens are the Greens want to have the disruptive approach. They want to shift it, they want to change it. I would even say, I know that makes me a little bit, they would criticize me for that, but disruptive does mean, okay, they will have some losers and they will have some winners. Whereas we as social democrats, we have to say, also having the trade unions in our back, they say, okay, we have to take care of the working places of that guys as well. And this is maybe the bridge between the Greens and the Conservatives. It's a little bit too easy, I know, to say the Conservatives are conservatives because they are conservatives. They want to shift also, but not maybe as fast as we want. A little bit makeup, but generally they want to leave it as it is. Whereas the Greens, as I said, they want to shift it totally disruptive. And then the bridge come in. We have to bring both together. How to achieve our targets, how to save the planet, how to solve the mobility problems of the future. Always not solved yet in my eyes. The last and the first mile issue is not solved yet. We have dozens of different studies, all of them trying to explain us as policymakers, do it like this and do it like that, but in the end it is not solved. And to be really frank, in that sense, I see a real good possibility for the two-wheelers when it comes to that. How to reach the station, how to reach the airports, first and last mile. It need to be a 1 mile. It could also be 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, something like that. And I would lie when I say at the moment now we have a solution for that problem. I would lie, which is not the case. None of us has the solution. It will be a bet for the future, for sure. But we have to take decisions today which should not be totally wrong, which should, in my eyes, be open, technological neutral, And we have to explain the people outside to our people outside, those who are really voting for those who want to have a disruptive approach, explaining them the difficulty of that. The same discussion, as I said, with the OEMs, you know. You can try to go the electrification there where it is possible. I would definitely say the individual mobility cars and so on has to be electrified for sure. But there are also, as I said, a stock of cars and vehicles who cannot be shifted fastly. This maybe for them we need to give the industry some period of time for the adaptation. But at the same time, we have to think about an issue that we haven't discussed yet, but in my eyes will be one of the most important, maybe the most important one, the electricity, the energy issue. How to gain the energy? Where should we gain the energy? Even if we as a European Union have really good approaches, and Franz Timmermans proved that really good. And it was once again Social Democratic commissioners, with the battery regulation, Maros Šefčovič, and the hydrogen, Franz Timmermans. Even then, I really doubt. Yesterday, one expert told me BASF in Germany, for example, will use 1/6 of the total energy what we have right now. You know, so only BASF, only one company. So you have all the other industries, automotive industry, supply industry, machine construction industries, not to talk about the chemicals and concrete and so on. So that brings me to my final conclusion. There is no solution yet. There is no silver bullet here. We have to have a mixture of different solutions with the hope that it will bring us to the solution. If we do it too fast and too restrictive, maybe we as Democrats, we won't be in the situation to shape the future when all the racists and right wings got the power.
Thank you, and you're linking perfectly to the top question coming through from our online audience as well, which is what will be the role or importance of e-fuels and biofuels in decarbonisation in Europe? I don't know which of the manufacturers wants to take that on e-fuels and biofuels.
Yep. I think we had a lot of this discussion today, and we are really counting on e-fuels. And I agree, not for these remaining use cases which cannot be transformed, these niches. I think it is very important for the bike park and the car park to get an immediate effect, and therefore we are very pushing for this solution, for not only for new bikes but also for the car park.
Yeah, again, perhaps as a complement of answer, I just would like to rebound about your comments. You say something very strong, which is finally we can only spend one time €1, so we have to be sure where we put the money. It's exactly the same for us as manufacturers and industrial. And I think that today we are at a important cross, with clear milestone and clear objectives. Zero emission 2050. Okay, now it's in front of us. And we know that if we respect all the technology we have, and it was exactly what Michele said before, we need to be free to adapt the correct technology for the product and usage, at the end reaching the goal. And if we do that, we have all to accept that electricity is a part of the solution. Hydrogen will be a part of the solution. And e-fuel is a part of the solution. And it's not a bad word to speak about e-fuel. Because we will need, if we don't accept all together, which means European Commission, member state, cities, all the one who can shake the system, we will have problems. Because what is the attitude of the manufacturers? When we see that everything is pushing for full electricity. Today, if you take the simple world and you just watch, you consider, okay, everybody wants 100% electricity. But what about the production of electricity? We know that in winter time it's super difficult. And 2 weeks ago, I could discuss with one of the board members of one of the biggest electric utility in France, and I have asked him if all the traffic go to electricity. Can you produce the electricity? No. How many nuclear plants you will need in addition? Between 7 and 10. How long it takes to produce, to build up one? 7 to 10 years. So what do? We have to rush all together to go 100% and to make our customers and users impossible to use their bike or cars because the infrastructure will not follow. We have to be responsible, mature, and to understand that the 3 technical solutions we can address today have to be considered, and then we can give clear milestone. For urban mobility, short distance, give the priority. Charger in the street, because this is the dilemma also. You can have some clear public policies, but the means are not deployed. So how do we use? What is the credibility of that? And we need that the public policy is credible. So we are absolutely motivated to support, but it will need the contribution of all the different actors. And if we can reach that, I think the industry will be obviously totally aligned with the politicians. And this is what we have to conclude, because we could do it on the homologation and regulation, technical regulation. Finally, step by step, we have progress all together. But now we can see this acceleration of time, and this time acceleration has to be managed and controlled. And the member states must be clear also, and not hiding themselves behind the Commission and everybody playing with the others. I know it's a dream, huh? But sometimes you need dreamers. So.
And we've got some responses and maybe questions coming from the room as well. If you could stand up and introduce yourself and your question as well.
I will just remove my mask. Do you hear me? Yes. My name is Mehdi Hossein. I'm working in the mobility unit of DG Grow. In the mobility unit, we deal with the cars, but we also deal with the motorbike, the rail, and all the other means of transport. And I think I would just also react to what has just been said on the e-fuel, on the electrification. I think it's true that for the time being, nobody can predict who will be the winner technology, if there will be one. And I think also that's why at this stage, it's also important and to have maybe and I think this discussion cannot be only for the motorbike, for the motorcycle industry alone, but I think there must be also a wider discussion. And the Commission, I would like also to inform you that the Commission is now developing mobility pathway. It's not a new piece of policy communication. It's just a process, co-creation process, to put all the actors of the mobility system at large, so automotive, motorcycle, rail, maritime, to engage them in a co-creation process in order to discuss this issue. And you are right, electricity, there are some issues. For the e-fuel, it's fantastic, but what is the cost? What is the availability at, and the affordability of e-fuel for the consumer, and when? I think it's also very interesting that we have CLEPA, because CLEPA, so the parts industry, is also providing for the automotive and also for the motorcycle and for other sectors. So there are, of course, solutions that can be common to all these industries. So I think indeed it's important that maybe we have, and we need to discuss to see what is feasible. And also, last point, I think it's fantastic what happened in the motorcycle industry compared to the automotive, because the automotive is minus 24 last year. Maybe this year it will be about the same as last year, or even worse in certain countries. And what we are also seeing, I think there is a competition inside, the motorcycle industry, but we also see now competition between the various parts. So we see also more and more people that use not only motorcycle, there was a boom for motorcycle, but also for the cycles, the bikes and the e-bikes. And what we see last year is that there were 22 million bikes sold in the EU and the UK, and about 4.5 million were e-bikes. And it's in countries such as Belgium and the Netherlands, it's already 50% market share. And when you just discuss with people, you realize that people that used to take the car or a scooter, now they use a e-bike. So of course we have also to see the competition. It will also come from this other segment that are not, currently in this category. And this is also something we must take into account, because the competition is not only for a given technology in an industry, it can also come from other segment. And just because we have also one of the CEO that is present is also representing a company that is, I think, major presence, for example, in India. I'm thinking about Piaggio. Now you have, for example, this what is called the e-rickshaw, the electric rickshaw. And we see that in some of these countries, for this application, like city deliveries, is taking there is a big push. So of course, indeed, electrification will maybe target certain segment in the first place, but it's coming. And maybe what we have, the traditional boundaries between the different categories of vehicles are also vanishing. And it's also something we have to reflect on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to pass immediately, because we're coming towards the end of the panel discussion today, pass immediately to the other audience member.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. So cities were mentioned several times by the panelists, so I thought it was an opportunity to say a few words. So my name is Suzanne Hoadley, and I work at Polis. So Polis is the network of city and regional authorities promoting sustainable mobility. So I'm not going to talk about powertrains, because that's not my area of expertise, and I realize there's a lot of interest in this topic in the room, but I will talk about, well, just very briefly mention, the low emission zones and zero emission zone policies that cities have been implementing have been criticized. And what I wanted to say was that one of the main drivers behind these policies is not just decarbonisation, it's not just to reduce CO2, it's to improve air quality. And in some countries, zero emission zones are actually called clean air zones. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying prematurely each year because of poor air quality. So I think it's really, really important to remember that. I also wanted to react to a couple of other points, and then I did have a question at the end. Space efficiency, yes, power two-wheelers, they're more space efficient than cars. In my household, there are 5 people living there, we have 1 car. So when, if we increase the occupancy of vehicles, then they become more competitive with power two-wheelers. But I guess the main point I wanted to make, and just building on the point that the gentleman from the World Health Organization said, was what is the role of power two-wheelers in our cities? I think that's really, really important. How can they contribute to this mobility mix? And there I wanted to raise the point of sharing. I haven't heard this word mentioned today. Cities are trying to reduce the use of vehicles, but they're trying to, the cars, power two-wheelers, they have a role to play as part of the mobility mix, a greater share in some cities than in others, depending on the availability of other modes of transport, but we would like to see more vehicles shared. That applies to cars, but that applies also to power two-wheelers, and I understand from some of our members in Southern Europe that there is a growth in the number of operators of power two-wheelers, whether it's mopeds or other types of power two-wheelers, and there is a growth in the number of subscribers. So what is the view of our panelists on this form of ownership of the vehicles that you're manufacturing?
Thank you very much. So the question on shared mobility for power two-wheelers. Anybody who wants to take that?
Yeah, well, we launched, as you perhaps know, as Piaggio Group, the program of sharing scooters 10 years ago in Italy as a pilot in Milan. That was the best town and big city to start with. It has been a tremendous disaster because people use the vehicle in unsafe mode. So we registered an increasing numbers of accidents. People doesn't use helmets. So that's why we closed down the project as Piaggio Group. Now I see that everybody is asking for shared mobility, but I don't think that power two-wheeled, even if it is electric or combustion engine, is used in the proper way. Kick scooters, sharing is the same. We don't invest in kick scooters because we think they are dangerous. Because people doesn't wear helmets, doesn't have a license, doesn't have any insurance. So it's better to analyze the consequence on those kind of experiments. Then you can decide as a town to ban everything and just say you shared everything so everybody would use public transportation perhaps. But we are not investing in dangerous products.
We have been also operating, and especially in Roma with three-wheelers, and also in Paris with three-wheelers also. The difficulty is that the number of use per day is not more efficient than when it's individual three-wheelers or scooters owned by an individual. So the problem is that you need a volume of units displayed in the city to be used, but at the end, the efficiency is not spectacular, is not as obvious like it could be. This is why all these tests are actually under operation, but there is no evidence. So it's not as easy that it could seem.
But I think we, with BMW, we did both. We have car sharing, and we did also on the bike side some pilot projects. We have one project is Rent a Ride, which is a platform where you can ride a bike, rent a bike. That's perfect. So you have a clear combination, the dealer and
but
people.
You know who's
yes,
using the bike.
Yes, you know who's using the bike. Perfect. But on both sides, also on the car side, the most there's one point in terms of efficiency that is a question of timing if it comes to the market, but the treatment on the car side is the most difficult part of the overall business case, and that is really disappointing. So we're offering a mean of transportation for individual mobility to people, and they treat this really, really bad. So that is the major problem in all sharing concepts at the moment, and I can't see efficiency could be, but on this point, how they treat it, they're doing car races. Anonymous.
Dangerous.
They shifting without using the clutch. They destroy deliberately, and this is not working. You can try it for 1 year or 2 years, but then you have to pull the plug. Yeah.
But not to be totally negative, I don't think the industry is saying forget sharing. Only road racers are using sharing products. Our preliminary test on swappable batteries in Japan and also in Southeast Asia is basically only sharing, not individual customers, because you can address or find the sharing customers easier than the other customers for such kind of test. And yes, we have abuse and stupidity cases, but we also have the other ones which drive normal. Yeah. But it is not only sharing or not sharing at all. The real market will tell us. For the time being, as my colleagues explained, sharing is a very entertaining business in Europe, where new sharing companies come and go, but it is probably a future business model. And we will look in all these future business model, because in the end of the day, we need all a customer would want to do this. So no, sharing is not out. Sharing is possible, but for the time period, sharing is not a business case, at least no positive one.
Thank you very much, Roland. So I think we're just coming towards the end of the session. I'd like to thank everybody online for their questions, huge number of them, especially around decarbonisation, which is something that we ended up focusing a lot of the discussion on today, clearly top of mind for everybody. Thanks as well to the panelists for sharing their views and the open discussion. I'd like to invite Antonio back now to say a few closing words on behalf of ACEM.
Thank you, Aled. Also from my side, a couple of remarks. The first one is that there wasn't enough time. I must say it is extremely interesting discussions. We hardly could really show you what is the direction we have in our vision. I would invite everybody to go on our website. There's a whole array of documents that have been posted that give you the overall, let's say, high-level direction we have, but importantly, a series of documents that actually touch upon all of the topics that were discussed today, and actually some that we didn't have the time for. What do I take out from this discussion? I think we call this event the ride to 2030 and beyond. The ride has just started. We are fully engaged as a sector. We think there's a lot of cooperation that should be taking place, and we are looking forward really to doing that with the Commission, with the policymaker, with the legislator, the Parliament, but also with the cities. And I think the representative from Polis really showed that when we're looking at this topic of improving mobility and making it more sustainable, we all have our stake to bring. We need to be open-minded. We need to make sure that we're looking really at what is the end goal we're trying to achieve, and we try to look at all the aspects. Again, also WHO, Nan, you were very, I think, keen in underlining that, and I'd like to stress it's an integral part of our vision too. Again, it goes back to the documents I was mentioning earlier. So I'm quite positive about the discussion we had. Without taking it further, I would like to thank also from the whole of ACEM the speakers, the ones that have left also, but the ones that stayed until the end. The audience in the room, I hope it was of interest to you. We really look forward to continuing this exchange as we move forward. The online audience was, I hope, interested in what we were discussing. Also, I'd like to invite people. You said there was a lot of questions being asked. We will look at those and see if we can provide some answers given the limited time. But please go to our website. Thanks to you, Aled, also for, I think, managing to take us through the whole topic. It was a challenge. And very importantly, thanks to the team that organized this in the Secretariat. It's been a huge challenge. It was our first hybrid event. My take is that it's probably not the last one, because we have a potential to reach out that is much bigger than a simple physical event. At the same time, seeing you all again after a year and a half for many, it's very refreshing. So I'd like to stress that too. Thank you very much for coming, and I wish you a nice end of the day. Thank you.